Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name's Sterling. I'm your host. There's a lot going on in the world of Twitter today with Justin Trudeau embarrassing Canadians at NATO, talking like a complete and total gaslighter. And of course, this created a lot of buzz around how Pierre Poilievre is so much more in touch with the common people and in touch with the needs of Canadians than Justin Trudeau, which caused Twitter to just explode with the far left screaming that Pierre Poilievre is a horrible human being. And I mean, they talk with such hatred, and then they blame the hatred on people that are conservatives. It's really quite bizarre. Anybody that is aware of the situation knows that the only people who in this time and in this day that are creating division, that are spitting hatred, are on the far left or on the left side of the spectrum. I guess they only like equality and inclusiveness when it suits them. When it doesn't suit them, when they have to include people that don't agree with them, they can't handle that, which makes you wonder why they weren't included in the first place. But I suppose that's a grander topic for a different video. This video, I just want to show you some of how the poor decisions of the far left have led Canada down a path that is, if we're not careful, going to be very difficult to come back from. It's going to take, the impact that it's going to have on the younger generation is already very profound. All right, before we get into it, I would ask you to like, to comment, to subscribe, and share this video with all of your socials. Okay, so I'm going to open with Stacy here. Hi guys, Vicky wants you to know that if you're religious, you're not allowed to participate in politics or democracy, which is strange because many of the political systems that we use are rooted in religion. So that's kind of a weird thing, especially in the West. Hospitals, courts, and government are all rooted in ideas behind the Christian religion. It's a kind, tolerant, and inclusive way to be. Vicky Campbell at Mary123459. It's very creative. Poilievre is a fucking grotesque little bastard. This shit infuriates me. It's American-style evangelical bullshit, and it's exactly what he planned for Canada, a shitstorm, just like what the USA went through with Trump, all based on religious bullshit and babblings. Now, I got to tell you right out of the gate that this kind of stuff bothers me. I'm sick and tired of being compared to, like, the American means nothing to me. Why are the left obsessed with the United States of America? Why are they obsessed? Is it just because the mainstream media that they consume only talks about American news? It never talks about Canada? Is it because the CBC, the CTV, Global, all those video channels put more reporters on Trump than they do on Trudeau? Is it because they want to believe that we're going to somehow, a country of Canada that was founded completely and totally based on the idea that we didn't want to be Americans, are going to be Americans? Or is it just because they have so much hate in their life that they need to attach it to something? I'm not sure, but you can see that Vicky is a warm and fuzzy individual who clearly should have been a diplomat by the way that she is so receptive to other people's ideas. No mention of Trudeau. I'm shocked. Yeah, see, me too. I'm also pretty shocked by the entire. And here, look, somebody made a new one, Trudeauing. Projecting your own flaws or destructive actions onto your political opponents. And I have to agree, the far left is an enormous amount of projecting. And if you're a young person and you don't necessarily understand what that means, I encourage you to look it up, because it is absolutely there's two tactics that the far left have. They have projection and they have denial. They just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, like Trudeau did when he was today describing how climate change is one of the worst existential threats that we have to North America. Never mind Russia, never mind Iran, never mind nuclear arms, never mind, it's climate change. True to form, the Liberal Party had to jump all over the idea. They have to try to compare Trump and Poilievre. And I think that it's a bad idea when you realize just how badly the United States has slipped under Biden. The fact that the Democratic Party is trying to remove Biden so that Trump can have a real contender to go up against. Even the Democratic Party knows that Trump's going to win. And that's because what people want, Trump is offering. People want a good life. They want good money. They want to be able to go home. They want to laugh. They don't want to hear all the time about how everybody's problems are their problems, and then they got to have a wide open border, and they got to be constantly on guard for crime and theft and all of those kinds of things. No, nobody wants that. It's not that he talks about anything. He doesn't say any problems about hatred. He simply points out the facts, and the facts speak for themselves. And people like that because that's what people want. The liberal and the far left seem to only be able to function on hate. So by comparing Poilievre to the popular president, a president who, by all accounts, will wipe up this upcoming election without any problem, it's because people in North America don't want what you get in the third world, and they just want to be happy. And apparently people on the far left are desperate and looking for reasons to blame you for all of their unhappiness. What I love is Natasha Live Free or Die. She wrote, imagine being so out of touch that you think common sense is negative. I have to agree with her on that one. That one's pretty funny. It's kind of straightforward to think that a person who wants common sense is somehow causing problems, but a person who says to you that climate change is the existential threat to the country, even though we have the highest crime rates in the free world, we have the most highest expensive housing in the free world, and yet somehow it's all about climate change. It's a bizarre way to look at the world, if you want my opinion. Next story is about a new tax by the Liberal government. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Canada's $1 million home tax sparks a debate. The Canadian Liberal government is considering a proposal to impose an annual surtax of 0.2% on homes valued over $1 million, sparking debate and criticism. Critics argue that this tax unfairly targets older homeowners and fails to address the root cause of the housing crisis. There are concerns that this tax will not solve the housing affordability issue and that it is part of the broader approach by the government to target specific groups in the housing market, such as foreign buyers and real estate flippers. The proposal has been met with opposition from various groups, including builders, real estate professionals, who argue taxes are not the solution to housing affordability. There are also concerns about the government's reliance on taxation and the potential impact on the economy and individual wealth accumulation. Let's establish a couple of things. The Liberal government only wants very few people accumulating any wealth. A tax on $1 million home. Do you have any idea how many homes in Toronto and Vancouver cost $1 million? That's most of them. There are very few places that you can buy in the city of Toronto, especially, or the city of Vancouver. The number one highest, most expensive city and the number 3 most expensive city on earth. There are one-bedroom condominiums going for almost $1 million in the city of Toronto after taxes that you are paying $1 million after what your mortgage is going to be saying. And of course, now because what the government will do will just have everybody reevaluate all of the property values. So they'll just keep pushing it up and up and up, and then they'll say to themselves, well, what it was started at 0.2% will become 1.0%, which will then continue to go. All the while, you're still paying your property tax to the city, and your house is not gaining any value, only that's the artificial value. How they want to make me believe that this is going to improve the housing market is staggering to me. It just makes no sense at all. And I swear to God, it really looks like the Liberals are not even trying to solve these problems. They look like they are literally trying to make them worse while they tell you that they're trying to do something about it. But what I want to point out is that this is yet another tax, another cash grab, because the Liberal Party is desperate to avoid a recession, economic collapse, devaluation of the dollar. Those are what's next. We can look at 25 countries in the world in the last 100 years that tried this exact same policy. And because of the shrinking economy, what happens next is the people that we owe all money to start to devalue our dollar. And that leads to hyperinflation ultimately, which will mean the end of the economy in the country and should literally tear this country to pieces, to shreds. It'll rip the very fabric. These guys don't seem to care. I guess the 4 or 5 properties they have in other countries is enough for them. The private islands that they own is good enough for them. They figure that they can go there and never have to worry about what's happening to Canadians. I don't know that for a fact, but it does seem like they don't really care what they're doing and how the impact goes toward us. So now every home that you buy in Toronto is going to have a federal a federal surtax put on it. You fix the bathroom, you improve the value of that home. More you got to give to Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. That sound like fairness for every generation? Does that sound like we're fixing the problem for the youth? Or does that sound like they're just trying to bleed us dry? Brian Lilly from the Toronto Sun, I believe, according to data, he put a post up. He said, according to data provided by the federal government, 256 people were charged with unaliving other people while out on bail or some other form of release. It's a number that it has been climbing. So if I read it right, people are out on bail for a crime, whatever that crime may be. And while they're out on bail, they commit another crime. And that crime happens to be one of the, that permanently harms another individual. And the federal government seems to be okay with it. The federal government that enacted Bill 5 and Bill C-75 keep telling us that it's not a problem that Justice Minister stands up who he wants to throw his names around when he's in the House of Commons, but when lives are literally on the line, he says nothing. He does nothing. He runs around talking about how everything is going to be kumbaya. There's no kumbaya. What are you on about? The only thing that there is happening right now is that people are suffering and people are afraid and people are living a horrible standard of living while you run around in your ivory tower in your mansion deciding that the rest of us were going to have to deal with all of the problems that you are creating. How's that fair? Again, I'm confused. Okay, so I saved the best for last. By best, I mean worst, of course. Justin Trudeau was in the United Nations today, embarrassing both himself and Canada and every Canadian on earth. He was talking about how they've opened a building of NATO climate change and excellence in downtown Montreal. I don't know why we would cram another building into one of our only 5 major cities, why we wouldn't spread that stuff out, why we wouldn't give that to a more depressed economy in other parts of the country. And I'm sure that by putting this building in downtown Montreal, it has had no impact on the housing situation in that major urban area. Of course, they have no plans to spread the people out. They want to cram them in there tight as can be. Now, I got to be honest with you. This speech went on for 10 minutes, and if you really want to hear it, I'll leave a link down in the description. It was just the same thing you hear him say in the House of Commons and everything. Canada is leading the way, G7, climate change, carbon tax, all of the same old repeating. Without the press calling him on it, he just gets away with saying it. And then he hopes that eventually, just like a bad song, you will start to agree with it or you'll start to sing along with it. I did, however, leave just like a couple of seconds in there that I wanted you to hear for absolute certainty, and so that I can explain to you just how far down the rabbit hole they have gone in this approach. All right, let's check it out. I'll be honest with you, it's hard to listen to.
Climate change is not only an existential environmental threat, but one of the defining security issues of our time. Rising sea levels and increasingly frequent and intense natural disasters threaten security infrastructure like ports and military bases that keep our alliance safe. A warming Arctic is opening up a new arena of competition that our adversaries are eager to exploit, and climate-induced floods, famines, and droughts exacerbate inequality, fuel conflict, and drive displacement across the globe, all of which disproportionately harm marginalized and vulnerable populations.
Okay, so there was all kinds of crap in that. The level of gaslighting was ridiculous, and it's unfortunate that nobody is there to call BS because it's pure straight up BS. First, he tries to let you think that there's rising sea levels. I've been hearing rising sea levels since 1975. And if rising sea levels are so profound, why is the South Pacific not washed away? I mean, the Philippines is 1,000 islands, the chain of Hawaiian islands, the Indonesian archipelago, most of Japan. I mean, the Pacific Ocean is chock full of countries that are just not super rich islands with high populations, and they don't seem to be washing away. So if the sea levels are rising, where are they rising? If the sea levels are rising, how come every time I turn around, Justin Trudeau's flying to an island in the Jamaicas? If the sea levels are rising, how come every time I hear the rich guy bought a new piece of property, he bought it on along the river or along the ocean? Where are these sea levels rising exactly? Then he says, oh, the warming climate has brought new adversaries to the far north. No, it hasn't. They've always been fighting over it. And the thing that you need to understand is there are three primary people: Russia, Canada, and, oh, wait, Denmark. Because the Greenland is a protectorate of Denmark. Are we now going to war with Denmark over Nunavik? Is that what you want me to believe? But he doesn't care what the truth of it is. He just wants to make you think like he's sage and that he scares you into believing that now it's okay that because it's marginalized communities, wood and coal can be given to poor communities and the rest of us have to do without. So that wood and coal can be burned up north, wood and coal can be burned in China, wood and coal can be burned all over Asia, but not you and I that live in the modern world. Nope, we can't have even gasoline in the car. The idea that somehow climate change impacts some people differently than others is sickening. This guy will not stop. He has absolutely zero scruples. The Liberal Party shows that they are shameless, that they completely and utterly do not care about facts. They only care about fear. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you next time.